Hey guys, how's it going? Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, December 31st, 2025. Goodbye to another pretty epic year of traveling. Currently 43 degrees Fahrenheit, that is 6 degrees Celsius, a chilly late afternoon here in Independence, Oregon. So the reason I'm here is I went to check out a used car to buy, and it had a cracked windshield that they didn't mention and various other issues, so didn't go for it. As I mentioned in my previous couple of videos, then I am visiting my friend Eric here in Oregon, in Salem, about a 25-minute drive away. He is an old friend of mine, and I use his address for my permanent address. And so I'm here visiting them, and then also still waiting on mail, my debit card that needs to arrive before I can take off and continue on my way. So on that note of my debit card, as I discussed in a couple of previous videos, then my checking account, oh great, we got wind blowers. They're going the other way at least, so let's wander over here. I thought that I would walk over to the river and do a little walk there. So on the subject of money getting stolen out of my account, which very fortunately has been returned by Wells Fargo, a provisional refund or whatever, still contingent on the investigation being completed, but it seems unlikely they would retract that money when there's no particular piece of evidence that should come up that would change things. So hopefully that is fully resolved. But yet another instance in my life of getting robbed, ripped off, whatever you want to call it. So of course the word robbed tends to imply like armed robbery, and almost all of these incidents do not involve armed robbery, although I did get held at gunpoint once, so I will mention that one a little later. But there have been a lot of incidents of theft and whatnot in my life, most of which were not while traveling. Only a couple of incidents while traveling. So most of the things that I'm going to mention here occurred here in the United States under many different circumstances. Now, the bit of good news is that it's been a while. So this last one with the checking account refunded, so you could call that, unsuccessful. The last real actual incident of theft was the 2015 Bogota pickpocketing. I will mention that later, but that was a decade ago. So far so good for my recent travels. All right, so I'm going to go through all of the various times that I've been, robbed, whatever you want to call it, pickpocketed, etc., in the course of my life. And so I'm just going on straight memory here. I will probably even forget a couple, but there have been a lot. So the first time I was ever robbed of something was when I was very, very young. I was like 5 or 6 years old, and we were camping somewhere in California. I had left my little backpack outside of the tent overnight. Okay, that doesn't go anywhere. Bicycle boat or campground. Let's wander in here, see where it goes. So I had left my little day pack that didn't have very much in it just outside of the tent. I think I might have been in a tent by myself, to the best of my recollection, and then my parents or whatever were in another tent nearby, something like that. And so I happened to wake up early in the morning. Maybe I heard a noise, and I look out the tent and see that my backpack is gone. So this is the first time my backpack was stolen. And then I look around further and I see a coyote off in the distance, like going up a hill with the backpack in its mouth. That is to the best of my recollection. So as far as what was in the backpack, there wasn't very much. There might have been like a pocket knife and a shirt or something. It's not like it was chock full of stuff, so no huge deal there. But you know, a little bit traumatizing as a young kid. So fast forward quite a long ways. I can't think of any time that something was stolen from me in the course of my childhood. I feel like maybe there was some instance of, yeah, I think somebody was like stealing my lunch out of my desk in 5th or 6th grade or something like that. Like it happened a few times, something like that. But can't remember anything, you know, serious happening in the course of my childhood. So then we fast forward to my Europe trip when I was 18 years old, and I have mentioned this story many times, so I will try to fly through it. Let's see where this little path goes. And so, long story short, end of my 3.5 months of traveling in Europe to 10 different countries back in 1990 when I was 18 years old. And so it was only like 4 or 5 days before my flight out of London back to California. Okay, interesting spot here. Whoa, that was a beaver. Amazing. I got a pretty good look at it. I saw the big tail. That's awesome. All right, let's try to get back into the light over here. So I come back to Paris. This was the 3rd time that I went to Paris on this trip. And so I planned to spend another couple nights there before getting back to London. I had almost no money left. And so this was in August, and so it was peak season, and this was pre-internet, so no online booking. And so one of the ways to find a place to stay was you would go to the tourist information office, and they had like a list from the various hotels and hostels, and then you would call them and confirm if they still had something like that. And so I went there, and they said there's nothing available because it's August and you're last minute. And I couldn't afford a hotel. I mean, I had like literally $50 to my name or something. And so I decided to sleep on the streets of Paris. This was the 2nd time that I slept on the streets of Paris on that trip. A previous time, a month or 2 earlier, I'd slept out. And so I decided to sleep on this bridge, the Pont Neuf, which means new bridge, even though it is the oldest bridge in Paris. And I lay out my camping mattress and sleeping bag, and then I use my day pack as a pillow, and then I tied my big backpack to the fence that was going around this statue of a guy on a horse. And so I sleep next to this little sort of low fence thing, metal fence, tie my backpack to it, and then wake up early in the morning and look over and realize my backpack stolen. But very luckily I had used my day pack as a pillow, and that had my passport, flight ticket, the little bit of cash that I had left, etc. So that was really a bummer because I lost like 2 rolls of film that I never got developed that I would just absolutely love to see. So lost, you know, my tent and some clothes, nothing much of great value, but still it was really a bummer to have lost like the backpack itself I really liked, and some cool clothes and stuff. So anyways, moving on. So the next incident that I can recall would have been winter of 1993. Now this wasn't actually a matter of theft, but a car disaster scenario. And so I'm going to do my best to kind of fly through these and not tell the whole story, because a bunch of them could be whole big long stories. But I had this vehicle. What was it? A little Datsun sedan. And I went camping with actually this girl who I had met in Europe, Sarah from Finland, who I'd met on a train, and that's a whole story. But she came out to California and the US in general in winter, kind of a random winter trip. And anyways, we end up going camping in California, Central California, well, kind of near the coast a bit, but kind of middle of nowhere, this area that I knew about, that the weather was pleasant in winter. And we go camping overnight and then come back the next day, and little trolley thing. So we're coming down the trail, kind of up on a hill, looking down at the parking lot where I'd parked my Datsun car, and I can see something is wrong. Like, the door looks weird. And as we get closer and closer, I realize, oh man, somebody really messed up my car. And so once we get there, we realize somebody, just being a vandal, didn't even steal anything, had thrown a cinder block through the windshield and like ripped a door partially off, something like that. So it was just like some local hooligans, I guess, just tearing things up for who knows what reason. They didn't even steal, the stereo out of it or anything. So that was a weird one. And so it was just destroyed beyond repair. There was no point, an old car like that. I ended up just abandoning it there. I think I ultimately had somebody tow it, someone nearby, but wasn't worth trying to repair. And so I was getting ready to move to Oregon. I ended up buying this, I think a Toyota station wagon, and I was moving to Oregon, and so the having to buy this other car really took a chunk out of the money that I had saved up to move to Oregon, and left me in a much more, precarious situation once I did get up there. But things, worked out as they worked out up in Oregon. That's a whole crazy story about my experiences up there. But I bought this Toyota station wagon, and so unfortunately that is the next theft, I believe, would be later that summer. Then I went on a road trip with my mom, stepdad, and my younger brother Christo to Canada, to revisit Canada for the first time since I was born there back in 1972. And we had lived there for a year and a half. My parents had been living there for I think just like 6 months or something, and then we moved back to California, where my family is all originally from. And so we went to the house where my parents lived, and I saw Vancouver for the first time as an adult and stuff, so it was a really cool trip. And then on the way back, so we were driving in two cars, I guess. Maybe it was my brother driving with me, and then my mom and stepdad in their car. And so we stop and stay at my aunt's house in Portland. And so I park on the street outside of her house, stay the night there, and then the next morning I remember very clearly my aunt saying, "Hey, where's your car?" I say, "Oh, well, I parked it right out front." And I look out and it's not there. It was stolen by probably drug addicts or something, because it was found months later with swastikas carved into the metal and just kind of trashed out. And I'd already bought another vehicle after that, and eventually managed to sell it actually for like $500, got a little something out of it. And so I was still living in Eugene at that point, and there were a number of incidents there. I had a mountain bike, this really cool bike that I had gotten through quite a lucky circumstance, which is that I was a reporter for the University of Alaska Southeast in Juneau, Alaska, and I was reporting on this event, a school event, and there was a raffle at the event. And so even though I was the reporter, I entered the raffle and ended up winning it, and it was a mountain bike was like the main big prize. And so that was back in 1991 or 92. And so I had this bike this whole time. Let's wander through town, I guess. And had this bike in Eugene. And then I was working at the Wow Hall, which is a music venue in Eugene, where I would volunteer. And so you would volunteer for half of the show and then get to see the other half of the show for free. So you could volunteer for the first part or the second part, but you always then got to see half of the show. And so that was your reward. And so I had biked to the show, locked my bike up on something like what we're seeing right up here, very secure bike rack. But I came out of the show, bike gone. They had cut the lock. It wasn't a U-lock, it was some sort of a cable lock that they were able to cut. Bike gone. And then I ended up being given this old crappy bike by a friend, which I used for the rest of my time in Eugene because I was just broke and couldn't afford to buy a new one. So really a bummer to lose that awesome bike. And then later in Eugene, another incident. This was another bad one. I lived in this house in which we didn't lock this one side door because it didn't lock properly. And I had 3 roommates. I think that there were 3 bedrooms upstairs and then a bedroom downstairs, and that was my room. And so I come back from work or something sometime in the afternoon and notice like a bunch of my CDs are missing. And then I go into my room and realize a bunch of my other things are missing. My backpack, I forget what else, but they got a bunch of things of value of mine. I might have been the only one that got robbed because my room was the downstairs room. And so losing that backpack really sucked because I, like saved up $200. It took me a while to save up to get that thing, and then lost a bunch of CDs and a number of other things. I forget what else, but they really got a lot of stuff of mine. All right, so thinking about it, I think that the next incident was in 1996. So this hooks into a whole wild and crazy series of my vagabonding adventures during the 1990s. I forget what time of year this was, but I think like kind of late spring, April or May or something like that. And so I had, I think, moved out of the apartment that I had in Arcata, California, where I'd just been living for like a couple months because I was like mostly vagabonding, and then I was staying at my mom's for a little while, but then going out and doing extended, months of hitchhiking around and stuff. And so I had almost no money, but for some reason I had enough money for that apartment for a couple months. And so moved out of there, and then there was this music festival happening in Washington State near Evergreen State College. So I just come across this, like a flyer or something, and so it was just like something to start out my summer's adventure, something like that. And so I remember sleeping out at the Evergreen State College in my tent somewhere, and then getting over to the music festival. And fortunately this one wasn't a bad one, but I camped at the festival, and then one of the nights, it was like 2 or 3 days, I come back to my tent, I see the flap wide open, and somebody had gone into my tent and they'd stolen my rain jacket, which I was really bummed about because it was a really cool rain jacket. I bought it from REI, brand new, and it was a really cool jacket. And then they grabbed like a little bag of some other things. That was pretty much it, but it was really a bummer losing that jacket. Okay, what would the next incident have been? I feel like I'm definitely missing a few. Oh, okay. Well, I skipped over it in the chronological order, but I mentioned previously robbed at gunpoint. So this was in fall of 1992. I was living with my dad and stepmom and brother in Petaluma, California, coming back from Alaska. Then I moved in with them and was going to Santa Rosa Junior College. The car that I mentioned that got vandalized, the little Datsun thing, then I had bought that there, I guess, and I was using that car to drive up to Santa Rosa Junior College and go to my classes. I was driving that car, and I went out on a date with this girl from the college, and we went to Berkeley for some reason. I think we did sort of a day thing and went to like the Exploratorium maybe in San Francisco. I forget. Anyways, we kind of spent the afternoon and evening together. Yeah, because it was dark when this happened. So we end up in Berkeley, and I remember this place with all these kind of random like slides and stuff made out of driftwood, this kind of interesting area that I'd visited as a teenager because I went to Berkeley High School. And so I think this was a place that like I would go with friends, and we would, do stuff you probably weren't allowed to do, and talk and hang out and stuff. And so I took this girl there, and so we walk around, and it's 7, 8 in the evening, something like that, but it was already dark. And this car pulls up as we're walking back to my car. They slow down, roll down the window, and a guy in the passenger seat pulls out a very tiny little gun and points it at us and says, "Give us whatever you got." And I said, "I got nothing." We literally had nothing. All I had was the keys because I left my stuff in the car. And so they check our pockets and then say, "These guys got nothing, let's get out of here." And that was it. But it was definitely a scary experience having a gun pointed at you. Okay, so the next one that I can recall, another minor one, but I was in India. This would have been almost exactly 26 years ago, because it was at the rainbow gathering that I went to in India that went over New Year's. It was like right around New Year's. And so it was end of December 1999. And I had traveled down to Gokarna, south of Goa, because I had heard about this rainbow gathering happening earlier in my trip. And so I had made that a destination of mine for my India trip, in which I had 5 months in India that time. And so I get to the rainbow gathering. There was nowhere to, secure your stuff. I have a passport and traveler's checks and whatnot. And so everybody was just like sleeping out. I didn't have a tent, but the weather was good. And so I was just sleeping on this, I don't know what, some sort of a sarong type of a thing or something. And then just putting my backpack and stuff on it. And I think that in order to make my stuff more secure, I had a money belt, and so my passport and cash and traveler's checks I had like hidden under the sarong, something like that. And then at some point I go to check, confirm that it's there, and I go and count the money and realize that $50 was missing. Now, it is within the realm of possibility that I just forgot how much money that I had. But at the time, to the best of my recollection, it was clear that something was missing. So I can't say 100% that something happened, but at the time, it was, very alarming, like, oh crap, somebody got into my stuff. But they didn't take everything. They didn't take all the cash. They didn't take my passport. They just took $50 and then put the thing back, the money belt with everything else in it. And I remember that there was one guy in particular that I suspected but had no solid proof, but I knew that he was traveling like he had overstayed his visa and he had like almost no money. And I felt like of anybody who might have ended up being a thief, it fit in that he somehow knew that my stuff was there and then decided, okay, I'm just gonna steal enough to help me keep going on my travels, and then put it back. So that one's a bit vague, but that is one of the 3 times that I have been robbed while traveling, if it even happened. So that one sort of almost doesn't count, but either way, it was only $50. All right, so I think that the next series of incidents occurred while I was living in Portland here in Oregon. Starting back in 2002, I moved to Portland after graduating from Humboldt State University in California. And so I mentioned previously Arcata, California, which is where Humboldt State is. I'd been living there for the couple of months back when I was a vagabond, and then ended up going back there and going to the university to finally get my degree. And so after that, in 2002, then I moved to Portland, and I got a little basement apartment. I had very little money at the time, and got this basic little apartment below a house. I locked my bike, some other mountain bike that I'd bought, to a wooden railing in the backyard of the house. And so one morning I went out to get my bike, gone. They had cut the wooden railing, like with a saw. You could see like a chunk of the railing was sawed out. It was like, man, these people were committed and, brazen, taking a chance like that of like a sawing sound. Must have been, middle of the night when I was sleeping, didn't hear it. Another mountain bike gone. And then 2 minor incidents in Portland. So this one is weird. Both of these occurred at the same house where I was living later during my time living in Portland. This is an interesting looking building up here. What is this? Oh, Baptist. First Baptist Church. So I'm in my apartment and some guy knocks on my door and asks for a glass of water. He says like, yeah, I'm really thirsty. I've been walking around in the sun. Could I just get a glass of water? And it's hard to deny somebody like, no, I'm not going to give you a glass of water, but that was obviously part of his scam. Ooh, we got a doggy. And so I say, sure, okay. I go over to my sink and pour a glass of water, come back, give him the water. He drinks the water and then leaves. And then after he's left, like a few minutes later, I look down and realize he stole my shoes. So I think what happened was when I disappeared around the corner to the sink, he glanced around to see if there was anything valuable. Must have like chucked it out the door, because then, 30 seconds later I come back with the water and he's just standing there, not holding my shoes. He must have chucked them out the door and then closed the door and then picked up the shoes. So, man, so petty. Obviously must have been a drug addict, just looking for whatever. And then while living at that same apartment, then once I went out to my car and somebody had broken into it. There wasn't much of value, but they had stolen a box of my cassette tapes that were under the seat. So there were 2 boxes of cassette tapes, but they only stole one of them, and I think that was it. Okay, it is definitely getting on time to wrap this up. Get back to my car, get back to Eric's house. Sun going down, getting chillier. So that would have been around 2004, I think. And this is the same year, yes, 2004, another car incident. Oh man, so this is a big one. So I was going out with this girl in Portland, and we decided to go on a road trip to Canada. So another car incident related to a Canada road trip. And so we drive up to Canada in her car, a Kia, I believe it was, and do our road trip, and then come back, stop in Seattle, park in a covered multi-level parking garage, and go to see the Space Needle in Seattle. Come back, car gone, stolen with all of our camping stuff in it. And so I lost, another backpack and all of the stuff that was in there, like my journal, irreplaceable journal, a tent that I really liked, clothes, all kinds of stuff. And then her car was found sometime months later, all messed up. Okay, so after that, the last one would be Bogota. So that was in 2004 when her car was stolen. And I can't think of anything else, quite possibly something I've forgotten. But then we get to Bogota, Colombia. I will fly through this one. So I arrive in Bogota for the start of a 3-month trip around South America in September of 2015. I am walking around the streets of Bogota with my day pack on my back, and for some strange reason I had my passport and my wallet with all of my cards in it in the day pack. Now normally I don't walk around with my passport when I'm exploring a city. I would put it in my room hidden away somewhere. So that was the main mistake that I made with that one, was just having all of my ID cards, etc. And so these 2 local women come up to me and are kind of bothering me, and they say something about water. There's some water dripping on me, and I think that they're saying look out, there's some water falling on you or something. It was really bizarre and random, and I just kind of brushed it off and kept walking. And then 30 seconds later thought, okay, that was weird, what just happened there? And went to look at my backpack, and the pocket was wide open, and they had nabbed my wallet and my change pouch with just, you know, coins in it, but my wallet had everything in it. So my passport had been in that same pocket, but luckily they hadn't gotten my passport, or that would have changed everything. That likely would have ended that trip. But they just got my wallet. But at the time, I didn't have the same sort of backup of cards that I have now. And so they got my bank card. I don't think that I even had a credit card at that time. I think I just had the one debit card. And then my driver's license and whatever other IDs and cards that I had in there, and all of the cash, because I had, I think, a couple $100 in US dollars and then some local currency in there. And so I was left with no money, zero, and no way to access money. Now, as far as how they managed to open up the pocket, I still do not understand how they did it. People have suggested that they shoved a pen into the zipper and then opened it that way, but that does not make sense, because you can't do that on somebody who's walking along and then go up to them and shove a pen into the zipper of their backpack and open it like that. So the zipper was not broken, the lock, so I had a little lock on the zipper. The lock was not broken, the lock was still locked, and so they had opened up the zipper somehow, because the zipper still worked. It closed back up, and I actually ended up using that backpack still for the rest of that trip. And so they managed to open the zipper somehow, but how you do that while somebody is walking along when it's on their back and you manage to get away with it is really, really mysterious. I mean, these guys were professionals. So whether it was the ladies or they were just distracting me or who knows. But anyway, somehow it happened. And so, bit of a long story. I ended up talking with some local people who were very helpful. They had a cell phone, because I didn't have a cell phone at the time, or I had an old style phone that I didn't travel with. And so I was able to call my mom, and she wired me money using Western Union, and then I had my passport so that I had ID so that I could pick up the cash. And then also, the next day, I get a message on Facebook from somebody who had found my wallet. So the thief had taken the money and then strewn the wallet, thrown it on the sidewalk or whatever, and this guy had found it, who worked in this shop somewhere. And so I go over there and pick it up, and I got my driver's license. So I had 2 cards. That's right, I did have 2 cards. One of which only had like $25 in it, something like that. And so I hadn't canceled that one, and that ended up actually being a bit of a blessing, some good luck there. So I'd canceled the other main card from my checking account, and that ended up being the main hassle that I had to deal with, was getting a new one mailed to me. But I had the other card with $25 or whatever in it. I go to an ATM, withdraw some cash, and now I had some money to pay for like dinner or whatever, and for the bus or the taxi or whatever I took to get to the Western Union to pick up the cash that my mom had wired to me. And also just to not have to replace my driver's license, and also my Canadian SIM card was in there, and so I got that back, and so that was all really, really lucky. And so then I got the cash and continued on my trip. So then after that, it's this checking account incident, and I feel like there's a couple of incidents that I had maybe forgotten about, but there you go. That's a bad string of luck there. Certainly, you know, a few of those I could have easily avoided, not sleeping out on a bridge in Paris, having my wallet better secured inside my backpack. But for the most part, you're talking about just, going about your life and stuff happens. So anyways, time for me to get out of here. So Happy New Year, and we'll see what happens in 2026. See ya.